Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today's going to be a really exciting session. It's about assessing your land and permitting. And we have none other than the famous Sam Love with us. He is with me here in Santa Rosa. We're actually at an open house, and it's going to be a beautiful house. If you haven't signed up for that already and you're in the Santa Rosa area of Sonoma County, it'll be a beautiful house to see. It's a gorgeous 2-story home. We've put a lot of love and attention into it, and it'll be a great chance to see a developed home. So sign up for the open house if you haven't already. I'll give you the link soon. But Sam, he's one of our senior most project managers. He's been with us from the start, and he's actually reviewed, hundreds, if not a couple hundred different projects with us and assessed different lands and, been through a bunch of build processes. And, he's really critical in the entire construction of your home. So he's a great guy to speak to about all of this. We have a very short presentation we're going to go through, and then we'll take some questions at the end. Some other really cool things about Sam is he has a background in urban planning and land use. He actually went to school for city and regional planning. So, urban planning, building, construction, permitting, like this is what he does. This is his bread and butter. So he's going to be really informative throughout this whole, 30 minutes, an hour, however long it takes. And then we'll just see how it goes. So we're just going to let a few more people join. The notification just went out that we've started the live stream. So we're going to let a few more people join, and then we're going to go from there. But in the meantime, Sam, how you doing?
I'm good, Kellan. How are you today?
Yeah, doing really well. The weather's beautiful here. It's been really cold up in Canada, so I'm actually happy to be here and enjoying this. So I think this is going to be fun.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome to California.
Thanks. So I'm just going to check the chat, see how everyone's doing. Will you be sharing an open house for the streamed open house? Yeah, Marvin. Yeah, definitely. We're going to be streaming probably later today, maybe just before the open house when there's a lot of people in the house. And then we'll be streaming, definitely Friday when no one's around. And we're going to have 2 scheduled times on Friday for those live streams. We're going to be doing one on Instagram and YouTube. And then we're also going to be doing a professional walkthrough recording video as well on Monday. And then that's going to live permanently on YouTube as well. So there's going to be a couple of different ways for you to see the open house. Okay, so a bunch of people just joined. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Kellan. I'm the Director of Growth with Devel, and I'm here to help you learn as much as you can about building modular homes and the process. And today we have Sam Love. For everyone else that I was just telling, Sam has worked on probably a couple hundred different projects and assessed different projects for their feasibility, for the slope and grade of the land, and if it's going to be an actual feasible site to build modular on, because it's very different from a traditional build where you just build on site. Sam's going to get into that. We're going to go through the presentation in a minute. So try to keep your questions just to the end, because Sam's going to be going through a lot of different information. And just know that a lot of what we're covering is going to be state and county specific. So we're going to try to cover what we can at like a high level, but some of your questions might be very specific to your project. So we'll try to keep those to the end, or you can just email us at hello@devel.com and we'll go through those questions in a bit more detail. All right, so let's kick this thing off.
All right. Hello, everyone. As Kellan mentioned, my name is Sam, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the initial step of building a modular home, and that is the feasibility of your piece of property or a piece of property that you're interested in purchasing. So the first question to ask here is, do I have the right land? So this applies if you already own your property and you are interested in building one of our homes on it. So part of this question is, if you have the right land, some really good things to look for right off the bat are, one, is your property accessible for high capacity vehicles like a semi truck, and of course our modules. which are approximately or can be up to 15 by 60 feet long. So it's something to consider, having an access road, being near an area where we can stage the modules before they are delivered. Also having somewhat flat access to a building pad, or having the interest to grade out your building pad. That is also very important. Something else to consider when wondering, do you have the right land, is or do you already have access to your utilities? Is that something that's available? Are you on septic or well? So those are some really great things to know right off the bat when you're assessing your own piece of property.
Beautiful. And just a couple of questions about that, Sam. When someone's thinking about whether or not high performance vehicles can get to the site, what else do they have to think about? Is this like, the roads right from the highway? Is this like their neighborhood roads? Like, what else should they look out for?
So something to consider, you can have a piece of property that is not directly, off of a freeway, for example. Many areas in rural communities have, plenty of access. Something to look for is do you have approximately 16 feet or more of road width on the path to your property? So off of any main, thoroughfare, the turning radius, the access, we typically are going to need 16 to 18 feet to have a comfortable gap to get to the property. As of course the modules are very large and they need the room to make their way to the site as they're being trailered by a semi truck or a similar vehicle.
Thank you. And then when we think about staging area, what do we have to look for? Because we're talking about bringing in potentially multiple modules and a crane bringing it on site. Like, are these one of these huge cranes that go on like the top of the building? Are these one of these cranes that get driven on like a sort of truck? Like, what can you explain that a bit more to me?
Yeah, so the staging area is typically where we have where the modules are going to live for maybe couple of hours before they're delivered and set. Our cranes that we use typically are on wheels, so they are motor driven. They're like a truck, but they have a big arm. They set up and they need about 35 feet as an entire radius around the actual the crane unit itself, and that includes all the counterweight that they will need to be putting on, and the any sort of ballast that the crane needs, so it is properly anchored in the ground.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, cool. So let's go to the next slide.
All right, so this is kind of similar to the former one, but this is how do I select land for modular? So things to look for if you do not already own a piece of property, this is a recommendation based on past experience and dealing with our customers, our clients, and people that have been interested in our homes in the past. You want to look for something that is accessible and has the requirements, the general requirements of what I was stating before, making sure that the property is definitely accessible for that 16 to 18 feet width, and it definitely can accommodate, trucks coming in and out, the 35-foot radius for the crane, and that can include some improvements to the land. That's definitely something that is possible and can certainly be done during the construction process, is making it more favorable to having that set up on site. As a recommendation, you always want to make sure you understand your utility situation if you do not already own the land. You want to know, is there power to the site? Is there already a water meter on site? What else is available? Is it going to be sewer? Is there a connection yet? So those are very good things to understand and know before you go and select a piece of property and make that investment to build any type of home, and then modular as well, looking specifically for the clear path of travel. The building pad area that you want to build is going to be accessible for the crane and for the modules.
Yeah, great. So what about like the slope of the land and like maybe some more remote pieces for modular? Like I've seen some really cool homes. I don't know if they're renderings, but they're like on the side of cliffs and I've seen other ones where like in the middle of the desert, in the middle of an open plain, maybe in Montana. So like, can we? Is it safe to assume you can build modular just about anywhere, or what do you think?
Yes, so you can build modular just about anywhere, so long as you have the proper, the site and the conditions, access conditions in which to do so. Absolutely. So you could build it, as Kellan mentioned, pretty much anywhere, any environment, so long as we are able to get the modules to the final destination.
Okay, cool. All right, next slide.
All right, so as I mentioned, kind of what to look for, and we can move through these fairly quickly and then address any more of those questions from Kellan, follow-ups. So what to look for, the access, the flat lots typically make it easier, and it's for cost is also something to factor in as well. And in being in an area in which I see there are some questions in the chat here, to look for if you're looking for a piece of property in, let's use Sonoma County, for example. If you select a lot that was a fire rebuild area that's been designated as that jurisdiction, it is typically a simpler process in terms of the permitting, which we'll get to in a little bit. You also want to make sure that you have done your due diligence on the property. So that means making sure you know what kind of soils you have, what, if any, there are any specific regulations or heritage trees that may be more difficult to remove, for example. Those are some things to consider as well. In addition to, of course, the main ones, the access and the actual building site area being available.
And when someone's looking for land and these different aspects that you just mentioned with the land, are we usually helping them do that? Do they work with a realtor, a general contractor? Is there some sort of maybe third-party expert that we can lean on to help our clients in this part of the stage?
Yes. So in purchasing land, of course, you're typically going to be working with some sort of professional in that regard. Oftentimes, that is a realtor who can provide a lot of very helpful information and feedback on some of the simpler questions when it comes specifically to modular. I believe our team has certainly will work with whoever to kind of understand those basic questions in terms of, I'm looking at this piece of property and this is what I want to do. Is this something you guys can do for us? And that's something that we have done in the past, myself included, along with Kellan and Ashley, following up and be working with our team to see, can we do this? And if so, how are we going to make it happen?
Great. Okay, thanks. That helps a lot. So I think the next section is really going to make it all clear. What do we need to avoid?
So some big things to avoid here are inaccessible pieces of land and land that has not had improvements done on it. So for example, buying a piece of land that does not have a road does make it a little more challenging. It adds some complexity to the project. Not that it's impossible to put in a driveway or add a road, but there are a lot of things to consider around that in terms of fire access, for the module access themselves, and of course the cost. As well as something to avoid is areas that may have limited services in terms of your utilities. That is always a very important thing to understand from the very beginning. That makes it more challenging down the road to connect the home or to obtain permits, dig a well, for example, connect to water, have a sewer system, septic, any of that.
Okay, great. And then what about like being near a river, water, in a flood zone? Like obviously that's important, but like how much does that get factored into this process? Is it just a matter of like building around it? Like what do we do when we're encountering water?
So if we're encountering water, so let's use something that you said, kind of a river or a stream, for example. So those are going to be typically an easement will be associated with that. So that's something to consider when you're thinking about your building pad location. So you look at an easement for a small seasonal creek that could be 25 feet on either side of the center line of the creek. That's a big thing to consider because obviously it can definitely change your desired location for the home. or in terms of making improvements to the land, you may not be able to build on that depending on the situation.
Got it. Okay. So like if I want to build near water, it's not like a hard stop. It's just a matter of like figuring out what the easement is and like how do we work around.
Correct. And you always want to be careful building around water because, of course, it is by nature, it can pool, puddle, and cause problems, of course. Water is definitely something to be very seriously considerate of when building.
Got it. Okay, thanks. That helps. So let's move on to the next big section, permitting for building modulars. I'll just jump right to the next slide here too.
So at the beginning of every project, of course, we must complete the full plan set for the home. That includes all of your construction drawings from your site plan, your structural plans, your mechanical engineering, electrical and plumbing plans. And this also includes all of your California required energy calculations and everything else that goes into a set for the state to approve. And I'm sure there may be some questions on that. I'm happy to answer that in a little more detail shortly following the presentation.
Got it. And so these construction documents, this is like architectural plans from us, and then we're working with the client and the city directly, or like what does that relationship usually look like?
So in this stage of preparing the construction documents, it is an internal process through our team and any third-party consultants that are needed to put those plans together and prepare them for the third-party reviewer, which happens before our local approval.
Got it. Okay. So let's look at third-party approval with the state.
So the third-party approval is a process that modular homes need to go through before, and it's part of the factory construction and gaining that approval from the state. So this is through the Housing and Community Development Department in the state of California and the Factory Built Housing Program. So there are third-party approval agencies that operate to act almost as an approver just on behalf of the state. So you're not submitting to the state of California directly. You take these plans, these construction documents, and they get submitted to one of these third-party approvers who comes in and does the inspections on behalf of the state. So anything that goes into those construction documents, they can come and inspect them in the factory. They're required to, and that's the beginning of the permitting process to get started with modular.
Okay, so if I was thinking about building a traditional home, stick built on site, and I already have plans and I'm already kind of further down this process, are you telling me I need to kind of start again and do this for the modular home and submit again?
Yes, that's correct. So any sort of submittal that you're going to be doing to a local jurisdiction, whether that's city or county, is going to have to be of the home that you will be building. So having plans and beginning the process and then deciding to move forward with Devel and having us do your construction documents and all the approvals, it's always great to have a head start if you do. But it's definitely not required, but it will be required to have our plans show our documentation to the local jurisdiction once we have obtained that state approval.
And what if I'm undecided about the home? Like say I love one of Devel's bungalows and maybe I'm also considering a 2-story and maybe even thinking about like an ADU, a mini home further down the line. Maybe I want to have my parents come and eventually live with us. Like, can I submit like 3 types of projects all at the same time? How would that work?
So I think this is moving a little towards the local approval section, but working with our design team, you begin the project and you tell us what you would like to build. We will work with you in terms of what exactly that's going to look like. Place the homes on the land. So let's say Kellan, you want your parents to move in with you soon, then we can place the 2-story home and the ADU on the lot, and you can decide to keep those plans, submit the permit for the local jurisdiction, and hang on to it for the approval, or you can have it on there as future ADU, for example. And so you'll still have those documents and they can be prepared at the same time if that's what you chose.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So on that note, then let's get into local approval.
So local approval is, of course, Kellan had mentioned this briefly, is a very different process for every jurisdiction that you may come across. So Sonoma County is different than Napa County. And for example, I saw someone here about Mendocino and Humboldt County are also different. They operate independently of one another. So that, of course, allows for a little bit of differentiation in terms of your timing, your expectation, and the requirements that they have. So the local approval process begins once the state has approved that plan set. So a local approval will typically require some more documents outside of the real construction components of the modules themselves. So we're talking, decks, overhangs, porches, garages, site-built components, essentially. So you'll need to have things like your driveway, or if you want a pool, those things are all going to be local specific. So they'll be added onto the plan set, which is something that, the site plan, for example, you'll have that additional documentation. The garage, you'll have additional structural plans that may or may not be within the third-party approval. And then that's all submitted to the local jurisdiction for their review.
Got it. Okay. So when I'm submitting for the local jurisdiction, am I submitting almost like a wish list of like everything that I could want to have on the property for like overhangs and front porches and garages and maybe some like beautiful like pergola in the backyard? Like, do I also then go on the jurisdiction's website to find all this stuff? Because sometimes that's a bit daunting, or what I'm saying is like, so do I just build a wish list and hope that everything gets approved, or am I usually working with like my general contractor and someone else too?
So the site-built items, placing other miscellaneous structures on the lot is something that during the design process we can accommodate. If you want a garage, something in your backyard, if it's something a little more involved and intricate, we typically will recommend our clients to go seek a landscape architect's assistance in terms of placing decorative site items that are not connected with the construction of the home, or maybe they are connected, so to speak, but they're non-structural elements. So finding the consultant to do that is something that we can provide recommendation upon, or guidance when searching for someone to do that.
Got it. Thank you. And then what about timing as it relates to permitting? Like, how early should I start this? Like, is it as soon as I have the construction documents and I know what plan? Are there ways to speed it up? Like, what's this timing scenario look like?
So that's a really good question, Kellan. It's, as I mentioned, it can vary pretty greatly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, where you may see, I saw some in the comments here about the coastal zone, for example. The coastal zone and the Coastal Commission operate separately from the county and city, regardless of which one it is. There are also local coastal programs where the Coastal Commission delegates some of the responsibility to the authority. And typically that'll be west of Highway 1 is when it's still Coastal Commission, and it can still be in the coastal zone if it's east of Highway 1, and this is California specific. If that's the case, sometimes there's an easier way to go around it, but the Coastal Commission timing is quite long to deal with. There's a lot of approvals, of course. California's coastline is beautiful. That's their goal, is to preserve it. But it does add some substantial timing to any sort of project within its boundaries. Speaking to the local approval, if you're looking at a normal jurisdiction, it also varies, and it depends on, is your home subject to design review, for example. Many times two-story homes are subject to design review, and that's either through a committee or through an administrative review within the jurisdiction. It would depend on the scope of your project as to which kind of timeline you may fall into in your area.
Got it. Okay. So timing obviously is a big hurdle, and really like the sooner the better. Got it. And now what about fees and like money? Am I paying for permits? Do I just submit and then they tell me how much it is? Like, how does that usually work?
So once you submit your permits for review, typically what will happen is you get either a worksheet or a fee document that states how much fees you are going to owe for the building permit. Again, this also varies fairly widely by jurisdiction in terms of what the cost will be. So if you are building a new home on a vacant piece of property, not within a fire rebuild zone, you are typically going to have to pay impact fees, which are an assessment on new development on public services. So you may have a school fee, for example, or a utility capacity charge or congestion charge. Those are pretty common around the state of California, and they can be somewhat costly in terms of their scope, and they also are due at different times depending on your jurisdiction. So some are due at issuance of your building permit, some are due at intake of your building permit. It does depend on your jurisdiction what the cost will be there.
Got it. Okay. So like the big moral of the story here is start early, work with some third-party consultant, and really try to understand the process like on like a personal level for your county as well before just jumping in and making some assumptions.
Exactly. Well, and it's always best to be of course, informed when starting a construction project of this size. Building a home is very, it's a big deal. So any sort of research you can do or asking the right questions is always the best way to start. If you're not familiar with the process or have never built a home or worked with a local jurisdiction to obtain approvals for any matter of things, there are a lot of complexities, so it's always something to ask about so that you know what's coming up front and there's no surprises.
Got it. Okay. So that's really helpful. So a couple more questions here. Marsha's wondering about building in Fresno. Have we built anything there? Have we assessed land and projects there? What's your familiarity with it?
So we do not have any projects in the Fresno area currently, but to my recollection, dealing with our sales team, we have had some interest out there without contacting the city directly. However, but typically areas in the Central Valley, depending on where you're building, are not overly tight in terms of their regulations. In at least my experience in dealing with the jurisdictional authorities for building permits.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And Mike and Kara are wondering about replacing an existing structure. How does that affect it? Is this like a huge hurdle? What are we looking at?
So I'll take the leap and assume perhaps this is a home. You're interested in tearing down an existing home and building a new one in its place. So we actually have done this before, and it's just an additional step. So that will be applying for a demolition permit, and then the additional cost of removing the old home to make way for the new one. But it is certainly doable and has been done before.
Good. And is there anything I should look out for when thinking about demolishing the house? Like obviously I'd want to maybe get a few different quotes, but while they're demolishing, do they have to do anything specific to the future module build?
So the one thing to look out for is if you're buying an older home to remove it, something to be very aware of is asbestos related cleanup. If you're looking to demolish a home, that is something that is very important to understand because it can slow your project down if you are not prepared to have that abatement work done immediately upon starting demolition. I would say that's probably the only thing to really look out for in terms of it standing in the way of timing or in the way of getting the new home there.
Got it. Okay. And Daniel's wondering about maybe the Finley or the Windermere models. They're single stories. What do you think the turning radius is offhand? I'm looking up the floor plans right now to see if maybe we can figure that out. But generally, what do you go with?
So typically you're going to need an additional approximately, I would really want to say like maybe 10 additional feet, 15 from either side of the width of the module. So if you're turning right, for example, you're going to want a decent amount of clearance on that right side all the way through. So there's a clear path of travel, and that would extend the whole length of the module as well. So whatever the size is, if it's 60 feet long, you'd want to add about 10 to 15 feet around that from the one side. So you'd be able to make the module swing the corner.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah, the Windermere, Daniel, I was just looking it up. The modules are roughly 15 feet by about 40-ish feet. So this means like we would need a radius of maybe about 25 feet to like 50 feet or 65 to move those modules.
That would be approximate. Of course, every situation is different. Every corner is different, so it would vary slightly. In terms of that, could be slightly greater, slightly smaller, depending on the sharpness of the bend and any percentage of incline.
Great, thank you. So we're at about 30 minutes now. If no one else has any really specific questions, we can wrap up early. Again, this recording is going to be sent out once I have it. And I'm also going to be adding some more information to these slides, and I'll include a bit more information within the slide deck when I send out the recordings. So Philip asking about the breeze house. So I can answer that. We don't make the breeze house anymore currently. We are in the process of updating it. We get a lot of people asking about it. It is a beautiful home. We are taking the Blue Homes models. Blue Homes is a company we purchased a couple of years ago, and we've moved to an all metal construction for the framing, so we have to update the plans accordingly. We are also standardizing pieces of the modules and modules themselves. So as soon as we have updated models, we're going to be posting them on the catalog page, which is catalog.devel.com. I'm just going to put that in the chat really quick. And we'll also email people to probably when the breeze house comes out, because this one's been very popular. But maybe you know offhand too, Sam, I think the Nahani and there's another model that's very similar to the breeze house.
Yeah, I'm. If you have them to pull them up, Kellan, can take a look if we're.
Cool. Okay. And Natasha is asking to clarify, Devel is able to provide consultation to prospective clients, determine feasibility, which you'd also recommend which third-party experts may be specific for the property. Yeah, I'll let Sam answer that.
So in terms of consultation, working with our sales team to determine if Devel is going to be able to build your home, that's something that we can speak to. So if you're interested, say, come to us and say, I'm looking at 123 Main Street, for example, and I'm interested, is this somewhere we can build so we can move the process forward? And we can make some simple recommendations based on the third party consultants that may be needed. But of course, we do not want to extend that too far or provide information that may, that we'll have to have additional consultants later on. So it's definitely an open dialogue to determine what's going to work and what's not.
Got it. Okay. And Pablo's asking, just to clarify, does the Coastal Commission approval depend 100% on my effort, meaning a third-party approval team would not help me?
So you can do it either one of two ways, either yourself or with a team to assist you. The documents are fairly complex. Some people do choose to do it themselves. Some people work with a third-party consultant that does entitlement management or potentially an attorney. So that is definitely kind of a wide range of options there. You do not have to do it yourself. There are plenty of options if you're seeking some help as you move through the permitting process.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'll just give it a couple minutes to see if anyone else has any questions, but thank you again for joining. We really appreciate you joining and learning a bit more with us. It's really fun to meet everyone and help you out in this way. Thank you, Sam, for joining the call and helping us. We appreciate your time and your expertise. And also the last plug for the open house. So we have an open house here in Santa Rosa, California. The first one is today from 5 to 7, and then the other one is Sunday. And I'm going to put the link in the chat here. It's shelterglen.devel.com. So you can register there. We have a few different spots open to you, and you can come up and see a beautiful Shaughnessy model. The Shaughnessy model is actually this module that you see in the right-hand corner of the slides. It's 7 different modules, including the garage, which is in red, and that's going to be there for you. So that's beautiful. Mike and Kara asking, do any of your models lend themselves to be built as garage apartments?
So, and I will assume here you mean placed on top of a existing garage or a new site-built garage. This is not something that we have done in the past. And for the sake of this question, I would rather refer to my team and then have get the information to Kellan and have him get back to you specifically on that one.
Yeah, so new site built garage module on top. Okay, Mike and Kara, I'll get back to you. I'll do some digging and see what we can do, and I'll let you know. I think I have your email from the registration, so I'll just email you directly. Great, okay. So we're going to just wind this down. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Philip. Thanks for joining. Again, we'll be sending out the recording as soon as we get it. Reply to the email and the recordings if you have any more questions. Otherwise, you can email me and Ashley directly. It's hello@devel.com, and we'll just keep helping you along your way. I think what I've taken away from this session is really to start early. It can be a bit overwhelming, so work with some sort of third-party expert and lean on them as much as we can to help ease the process and get everything ready for permitting. So thank you, Sam. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kellan.
Great. All right. So we'll see you next Thursday. We're going to send out an email again early next week to let you know who's going to be hosting with us. There is a survey link in the reminder email or the sign up email. I'll make sure I send it in the follow up just to see if there's any other topics you want us to cover. We'll try to cover them in a general sense and try to keep the specifics about your project to email or personal conversation. But, if you want to let us know what you want to hear more about, we're happy to cover that. Eventually, we'll get on the founders, one of the founders, maybe even Brandon. He's our building science expert. So if you really want to nerd out about like the energy efficiency and the materials we use, he's the guy to talk to about that. If you really want to know like about the factory and the operations, maybe we'll get Tim Clements on here. He's a fantastic guy and built multiple projects across different industries. So just let us know and we'll get you as much information as possible. But until next Thursday, have a great weekend. Maybe we'll see you at the open house, and take care.